totally good with it, you know? I'm open to honest disagreements about the law, but judges who don't have regard for the law and don't follow it, really, yeah. I've left courtrooms ready to tear up my law license for that very reason. What else? Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yes. Hold on. I was in court yesterday, and the CLO, I should say it was at 351st. The most delightful person. She was great. And I told her, you are great. You know, wow, your attitude is so bright. She goes, you know, we're all in this together, and we're all doing this, and it's a wonderful day, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to help. And I told her, I said, sometimes we don't get that from people, and it's just so wonderful to hear it, but very true. Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah. That's right. Paul?
Making the mistake of talking to jurors.
Getting comments from jurors after a trial. Yeah, I quit that a long time ago. You know, right after a trial, all I want to hear is how good I was. That's it. That's all I want to hear. Yeah. It's the same thing after today, by the way. That's all I want to hear. So there I am 15 years or so ago, feeling completely disconnected from the coolness of what we do, feeling justified in my sense of self-pity, disconnected from the privilege, the sense of privilege that it is that we should have to practice our profession. And I say this with all the love in my heart for all our assistant DA friends who are important and who are our brothers and sisters in this process. And the world needs good, ethical, zealous advocacy and effective advocacy for the representatives of the state. But it is the criminal defense lawyer, and only the criminal defense lawyer, who does something that is quintessentially American. We defend, and it's only us, defend and protect the Constitution of the United States, the most important and significant written document in the history of human governance, I believe. We enforce the rights, and only us, that are in the Constitution. Only the criminal defense lawyer makes sure that the Constitution means what it actually says. There have been so many cool people who have done our profession over the years, and I had become disconnected from them. I'd forgotten that I'm in this really long, wonderful line of awesome lawyers and Americans. And they're in literature, they're in history, and we're going to talk about that. But we in Harris County are so lucky because we don't have to go outside of our courthouse at all to find the inspiration from the great, great lawyers. And some of whom are here. Foreman, Haynes, Ramsey, DeGuerin, Andrew Jefferson, Johnny Holmes, Rusty Hardin, Craig Washington, Grant Hardaway, who is here in the epitome of a gentleman at all times, Belinda Hill, Casey Kiernan, the Scardino brothers, who the great AD would refer to when they were together as the Scardini, which I thought was awesome. Robert Jones, and so many more who we could all mention. We could stand here for the rest of the time and you shout out the names of the people who influenced you. But there are two people here who I believe, for me, had the most influence of anyone on my career as a lawyer and as a person, and that's the law firm of Bennett and Sechrist. Mac, who we are so lucky to still rub shoulders with down at the courthouse, who just tried this year's trial of the century, and of course Bob Bennett, the great one, in my opinion, the absolute mountaintop of lawyers and almost anything else. I asked Bob to be here today. We don't see him in the courthouse. He's retired. He's still doing great work for people in need in our community. But I asked him to come down. He said, I won't have a speaking part, will I? I said, no, you just have to sit and look pretty. He said, okay, I'll sit next to Sechrist. He didn't actually say that. But Bob told me never let the truth stand between me and a good story, so it's your own lesson learned from you. So thank you, Bob and Mac, for both coming and everything. So there have been great lawyers in literature and great lawyers in the arts, and one of them is a lawyer that we could probably all agree is widely viewed as the paradigm, the ideal lawyer as viewed by most people in the community. I'm going to show you a little clip and then we'll talk about it. Thought I was. That's not it, y'all. Hold on. Where's our guy? I don't know. Oh, that's not it either.
Look on the desktop. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Stand up. Your father's passing.
All right. All our friends, all our neighbors agree this is the guy, right? He's the lawyer we all aspire to. You know what? What we do every day, 50 times cooler than that. I'll tell you why. How many of you try cases and the whole county shows up? How many of you try cases to full courtrooms? How many of you try cases when you turn around from the counsel table, there's nobody there? How many of you, when you leave the courtroom, leave to applause and reverence? And here's a guy, Atticus Finch, representing somebody who's not guilty. What kind of bullshit is that? I mean, you think about this. Think about this. The author of the book could not give him the moral high ground, or the readers of the book or the watchers of the movie would not cede to him the moral high ground if he represented somebody who's guilty, right? That's how the average guy thinks. I'm not criticizing, it just is what it is. It takes people with brains as big as ours to know that the real moral high ground is in representing people who are guilty. There's another lawyer who you don't know very much about, and I want to introduce you to him. I read a book 10 years or so ago. It's called Justice at Dachau, and it's about the trials that occurred after World War II at Dachau. These are different trials than the ones at Nuremberg. These were military tribunals from Dachau that occurred at the camp at Dachau. And there was a lawyer I read about in the book. He was the defense lawyer. And he was the most fascinating, interesting guy in the book, in my opinion. His name was Douglas Bates II. Douglas Bates II was a lawyer, a young lawyer in Centerville, Tennessee. And he was from a family of lawyers. The first lawyer from the Bates law firm was from 1848. That law firm, by the way, is still going 141 years later in Centerville, Tennessee. Douglas Bates, a young lawyer there, and he's not doing so great. He's struggling, and he ends up in the army, walks 11 months across Europe, Germany and France. He's in combat, unheard of, 11 months. He's in the artillery. He ends up in Germany and gets appointed to represent the first 40 defendants at the trial at Dachau. Now think about this. Here's a guy who just spent 11 months trying to kill and trying not to be killed by Nazis. And all of a sudden, he is appointed to represent them. You can imagine that the Germans were not particularly optimistic about their chances and about the quality of the defense they were going to receive, but boy, they were wrong. This guy files motions to quash because the indictment, which was based on new legal theories, was insufficient and vague and unclear. He filed motions to suppress the confessions, which he claimed were done as a result of torture. He filed a litany of motions. He cross-examined all of the witnesses vigorously, and these were trials where the conclusion was foregone. The burden of proof was on the defendant. The interrogators for the army had access to the defendants without a lawyer being present. So I was fascinated by this trial, and I searched around, and I found his son, who's Douglas Bates III. And Douglas Bates III is a lawyer in Centerville, Texas. So is Douglas Bates IV. And when I called Douglas Bates III, he could not have been more kind and courteous to me. And he also could not have been more proud to talk about his dad. And he sent to me some archives that he had, some photographs of archives that he had from his dad. And I want to show those to you. That's Douglas Bates II, Colonel. And you can't see it, but when he sent these things to me, he said, Douglas Bates III said, "Who are you going to be talking to? What kind of law do you practice?" I said, "Criminal defense." He goes, "Oh boy, you know, we used to do criminal defense, but I just can't do it anymore. I'm not up to it. I don't have the energy. But I admire criminal defense lawyers so much." And he sent this little Post-it note on the picture, and it says, "George, you know, thanks for understanding. Tell your fellows that I know that they are the real lawyers." Well, one of the first things, and I'm trying to edit these things, but he sent me a letter that his dad had written to his mom. His mom was stateside. And it's hard to read. I'm going to read the important parts to you, but he writes, "Let it be well understood that I was ordered to do this job, and since I was ordered to do this over my protest, I nevertheless intend to do the best I can toward the defense of these people, all probably futilely. Public sentiment is bitter against the 40 defendants, and many cannot understand why we are really working on their defense. I don't know that I understand it either, except that I'm just made that way, and I can't help it. You must remember two things. First, we were ordered to do this job, and second, having been ordered to do the job, we feel the responsibility for the lives of 40 people. I want to read to you just a bit of his closing argument. He says, because on the defense, the unpopular side in this case, we 4 lawyers have had to walk alone. Ridicule and shame have been heaped upon us because we represent the defense through no choosing of our own. But if it was my duty to defend Nazis, then it was my duty to defend them with all my vigor and power. We could have sat idly by, made a feeble objection now and then for the record, and let it go. But that's not my idea of duty. When called upon to defend, it is our duty to defend with every power we knew and all the legal training and experience we had. And we've done that. There is this thing called conscience, and in the wee hours of the morning, when we can't sleep, I'm glad that we defense counselors can say that the blood of nobody will be on our conscience. We've stood here with all the power and law that we knew to be right and just to defend the accused. He sent to me the verdict sheet. In 30 minutes, or 30 minutes or 90, I can't remember.